Hello, my name is Kent Welch. I'm the pastor of Covenant Missionary Baptist Church, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. I would like to share with you today about a door that the Lord has opened to share the gospel in the nation of Pakistan. There is a lot to share, and I will try to keep this video as brief as possible while also giving you enough information to understand the nature of the work and our thoughts about it moving forward. I want to cover 6 main topics in today's video. First, I want to tell you just a little bit about Pakistan and the city of Lahore, where Brother Jeff Elliott and I visited. Second, give you some context for Christianity in Pakistan. Let you know some of the unique challenges that face Christians who live there. Third, tell you how this work got started. Fourth, share with you some experiences that Brother Jeff and I had while we were in Pakistan. Fifth, share with you where we see the work going in both the near term and the long term. And 6, let you know how you can get involved should you or your church desire to do so. Before getting into the things that we will cover in today's video, I do want to just start by saying how thankful I am to God to give such an opportunity as this to share the gospel in the nation of Pakistan. I've been humbled from the very beginning, and I continue to be today. I am just simply amazed at the opportunity that Brother Jeff and I have had to share Christ in the nation of Pakistan. It has been a great blessing. I thank you for all those who prayed for us while we were in Pakistan and for our safe return. And I thank you to those who prayed for us leading up to the trip and continue to pray for us since we returned. I was asked whether I felt relief when we arrived back in the United States, and the truthful answer is no. I left going to Pakistan knowing that the Lord had directed and sent us there, not knowing what we would find, not understanding why or to what end the Lord might have for us as we went there, and went there in many ways with a light heart, certainly some concern, but nothing of any significant concern for my part. But when we came home, so much work seems to be now in front of us, and years of labor and effort that could be laid out in front of us. We'll try not to test the Lord. We'll take one step at a time. We will trust Him as we have tried to trust Him to this point. We pray that we don't ever test Him, but that we continue to trust as He leads. And I would ask you to continue to pray for the work and for wisdom for those that are involved. From the beginning, this has been far beyond me. It will continue to be so, but it is not far beyond God. So first, a little bit about the nation of Pakistan. Pakistan is often associated with the Middle East, but geographically it is actually in South Asia. The Arabian Sea borders Pakistan on the south, India is to the east, China is to the north, and Afghanistan and Iran are to the west. It is the 5th most populated nation in the world with 220 million people. Brother Jeff and I spent our time in the city of Lahore and in some of the surrounding villages. And Lahore is a large city located in the northwest part of the nation with around 12 million people in the city. The Apostle Thomas is credited with bringing the gospel to the Indian subcontinent, which would include the area now known as Pakistan. In 1947, after a peace deal brokered between the Hindus and the Muslims, the Islamic State of Pakistan was formed. Christianity then, in Pakistan, as you might imagine, with Islam being the official religion, Christianity composes a very small percentage of the population. Only 1.27% of people in Pakistan practice any form of Christianity. And again, that's any form, whether that be Catholic, Protestant, Independent, Eastern Orthodox, whatever form it might be. All Christian denominations combined only represent 1.27% of the population in Pakistan. Islam is, of course, the official religion in the nation of Pakistan, and written into their constitution is a law that is called the blasphemy law. What that law states, in essence, is if someone insults the Prophet Muhammad or the Quran, they are guilty of blasphemy. The sentence for this crime is life in prison or death. So anyone proclaiming Christ can be accused of blasphemy, and many have been. Just this week I've been in contact with a man whose family is in another country seeking asylum from Pakistan after he has been accused of blasphemy. So this is the context of Christianity in Pakistan, at least some of it. Beyond just the blasphemy law, Christians are marginalized. They do not have the benefit of many protections that the state affords their fellow Islamic citizens. They are often in poor communities. I've seen poverty in my travels across the world, in Africa, also in India, and in Romania. I've seen those who have struggled with poverty, and I don't know that I've seen anything quite like what I saw while I was in Pakistan, and these Christian communities that are in many ways enslaved to Muslim landowners for just the most basic sustenance and a life of existence. And I pray that the Lord would open doors for us to help them in whatever way that we can. But Christianity practiced in Pakistan is practiced under continual threat of persecution and marginalization. And so I pray that the Lord would help us to pray for them and to encourage them and to share the love of Christ with them and to not take for granted the freedoms that we have here and work that God might open doors for the same to be shared and experienced by our fellow believers in the nation of Pakistan. So how did all this begin? How did Brother Jeff Elliott and I find our way to Pakistan? A man who lives in the city of Lahore, his name is Shirag, reached out to me after hearing a sermon that our church had posted on Sermon Audio. After hearing the sermon, Shirag said that the Lord placed on his heart a burden to reach out to me and invite me to come and share the gospel in his community and with his people. When I first received Shirag's invitation, I of course met that invitation with some skepticism and reservation. Having traveled to other places and being privileged to speak on the radio in other nations that reach many people in many nations, I have received a number of invitations over the years to go to various places. Many of them I dismiss. There isn't a sense in my heart that the Lord would have me to entertain that invitation. But Shirag reached out to me, and while there was skepticism and reservation, and I'll share more about that in a moment, there was something of a catch in my heart, in my spirit, to reply and at least give them some encouragement if I could. Shirag, by the way, shares his testimony of being saved when he was 19 years old, and having spent time with him, his love for Christ seems very evident to me, and I think as well to Brother Jeff and to those who would come to know him. But when I received his email, again, with skepticism and reservation, I responded and I said I was not a part of a large church or a large organization of any kind or denomination, and that if he was in need of financial assistance, that he should look elsewhere. And I prayed for him, I said, and I wished him well, and I hope that he and his family and the community of believers there, that the Lord would be with them. Shirag received that and responded relatively soon afterward and simply said it was not money that he was looking for. He felt compelled, he said, by the Lord to send an invitation to me to come and share the gospel. And he replied again that was his only interest, that we would come, that I would come and preach for the people there. He spoke of how in 2016 that it had, at least in some sense, officially become legal for one to be Christian in Pakistan, which was a significant step forward. Of course, there's still the blasphemy law. There's still the persecution. There's still all of the things that follow those things. But at least he said in 2016 it became legal to be Christian, and he said he wanted to reach the nation, his nation, with the gospel. Chirag shared as well that he had prayed. He had also met with other brothers, a few, he said, and they had prayed together. They had listened to some sermons, and they all felt the Lord impressing them to reach out to me and invite me to come and share the gospel. Several more emails were exchanged, and they went back and forth. I went back and forth with him several times via email. Things progressed to the point of I wanted to hear from him, hear his voice, listen to him, get to know him a little better, and question him a little bit as well. And so we set up a first phone call via WhatsApp. Anybody who communicates with people in India or Pakistan are probably well familiar with that app in order to communicate with people over there. And on that call, on that first call, I sensed very much a sincerity in Chirag. I asked him what it was he wanted me to do, what his thoughts or his plans or his desires, what was it that he was looking for me to do. And I asked that a number of different times, and he told me that he had followed the Lord in inviting me, and that was his burden, to call and invite me to come, to preach and to share the gospel. And his response to me, as I asked him what it was he was looking for me to do, he says, I have followed the Lord in inviting you. That's all I know. You now follow the Lord, and you come and share the gospel with our people here. And so certainly I was encouraged by that response, that his only desire was for us to come and share the gospel. More phone calls and emails followed that one. Eventually, after prayer and continued consideration, sober consideration, thoughtful consideration, I felt a confirmation in my heart that the Lord was indeed in the midst of this, and that I was going to need to go to Pakistan if I was to be obedient to my Lord. And so after coming to that decision in my own heart, in my own mind, shared that, of course, with my wife Sarah and a few, very few close, trusted acquaintances. And initially, I wanted to go alone. I know that sounds foolish to most people. It was not to be a maverick. It was not to be a glory hound. I did not want to put anyone else in any risk. I did not want to encourage someone to go somewhere that their life would be at risk. And so I was interested initially in just making this journey alone and maybe find out what the Lord would have for me to find there. But after receiving some wise counsel from these trusted advisors, I certainly saw the wisdom in having someone go with me. I think it was my wife who said even the Lord sent them out 2 by 2. And so I prayed, and we considered together who we might even approach this request with. And Brother Jeff Elliott was placed on our heart and our mind, and I called Brother Jeff. I believe it was in July, if I remember, or June. It was in the summer. And called him and shared a little bit about what had been taking place, my sense that the Lord was desiring for me to go and calling me to go, and I asked him to pray and to consider going with me. And he took some time and prayed himself and called back and said that he felt that the Lord had affirmed for him as well that he was to go too. And so together we went. We completed our visa applications, and at every step here I was just trusting the Lord one step at a time, and I thought, well, we'll apply for a visa, maybe they won't grant it, we'll just do things one step at a time. We were approved for our visas very, very quickly, within a matter of a week or two, and had our visas in hand, and we booked our travel to go, and we of course went this past January. There are so many things that I could share with you about our time in Pakistan, and this video would be far too long if I tried to share many of those experiences with you. Would love to share them with you in person, or if your church would like me to come and share some of this in more detail, would love to do that. I know Brother Jeff would as well. We've had an opportunity to share with several churches, and certainly would be welcome to entertain that with others. But in summary, while we were there, we visited just most every day. There was a church service in the evening. On one day we had a teaching conference as well in the afternoon, where Christians from many parts of Pakistan were invited to come. It was something that Shirag, once he knew we were coming, was organizing and finding a place for us to come and to teach a lesson to those who would come, and a number of pastors of various churches in Pakistan were able to come. And so we visited with many churches and participated in their church services, and were allowed to preach, of course, through translators. The language in Pakistan is called Urdu, U-R-D-U. That is the official language. In Lahore, which is in the area of the Punjab, there's also language that is spoken called Punjabi. They are very similar, Urdu and Punjabi, enough I think that very, very simple conversation and communication can take place. But we preached, and the brothers who had invited us to come and that Shirag had put together to be our team in Pakistan, as he called them, would translate for us. And again, happy to share more about that with you and tell you about those men. If you would like to know, just reach out and see how we might arrange for that. But we visited their churches. Brother Jeff and I preached, were given freedom, liberty to preach what we believe, and shared the gospel of Christ and the new birth, being born again, and peace in our heart after conviction of sin and sorrow, and understanding who we are and who God is, and seeking Him and until we know that we're saved. And their reception of that message was positive, and if you want to make those people smile and warm to you and to your thoughts, speak to them about Jesus. It was a wonderful thing to see. So we visited many of their churches, and we also visited a number of schools, one in particular, a miracle, I believe, of the Lord, that in the Islamic State of Pakistan, a Christian school has been started. It is only a couple of years old, but it is officially registered and officially approved by the government of Pakistan. And that is El Shaddai School in Lahore, Pakistan. They teach the regular curriculum of the public schools there, and yet instead of the Quran, they teach the scriptures. They teach the Bible. And I could go on and on and on about the excitement that I felt and the connection that I felt with the administrator of that school and the teachers there, and the joy that I experienced while being in Pakistan and seeing what the Lord was doing with these young children. And I'll just share this. The administrator of the school there, his eyes lit up as he was sharing with me about how these small children go home and they are telling and teaching their illiterate parents the scripture. And he grinned from ear to ear, and he was just so joyful about that thought. He says, we're bringing the gospel through these children and teaching it to them as well. And he said, our goal for this school is that by the time they leave here, they are able to read the Bible. And this, by the way, is a school that is in grades 1 through 5. In Pakistan, the grades go from 1 to 10, and then after the 10th year of that schooling, of what we would call primary and then high school, they go on to university. This school has 123 students. They have 80 on their waiting list of students and people who desire that their children be enrolled in this school and taught the scriptures. I believe the Lord is in the midst of that work, and I believe that's how you change a nation, is through the education of their children, and I just was marveling at what God was doing and continued to do so. And so the schools were an important part of the trip for me. Of course, the primary and the most important was the sharing of the gospel, and through that, the teaching of these children the gospel by allowing them and teaching them how to read and in teaching them the scriptures. Besides that school there in Lahore, there are others in surrounding villages that Brother Shirag has begun and started. We were blessed to have these children come around and show us their lessons, and it is abundantly clear that these people are working diligently and responsibly with these young children and teaching them as best they can with the resources that they have available. Just very quickly, the students in El Shaddai School are given uniforms, 2 uniforms. They're also fed 1 meal a day. And to educate one child for an entire school year, including the uniforms and the books and the teacher salaries and all that comes along with it, if I remember right, it was around $123 per year. So certainly not a large sum for such a benefit. They have need, of course, of a larger facility. They have some areas that they're looking at that would allow them to expand their number of students and see to some of those students that are on the waiting list, as well, of course, as adding those grades of 6 through 10. So visiting the churches was a blessing, and hearing them sing. When they were singing their songs, we would ask what they were singing, and the response would be Psalm 82 or Psalm 101 or one of the Psalms. They often, their hymn book, their songs that they often sang were right from Scripture and were from the book of Psalms, and I certainly was encouraged by that as well. Another thing that we did while we were there was visit what are called brick kiln villages. These are villages, largely Christian communities, living on Muslim-owned land, and they make bricks all day, every day, day in and day out. From 10 years old and up, you work an 8 to 9 hour shift making bricks and all that goes along with that process. And those bricks then are sold at market and, of course, then used in building projects of all kinds throughout the city. And I couldn't help but see some similarities of the Israelites in Egypt building Pharaoh's treasure cities, and how Christians here in Pakistan making bricks to build a nation in an Islamic controlled place. But we visited there, and of course the poverty and the need there is beyond words to describe. But we were privileged to meet with them and their children. We were able to share the gospel with them. We were able to sit in their home, a one-room place most of the time, very humble abode and very humble living conditions, but they would give us tea and we would be able to eat with them and talk with them and share the gospel with them and get a sense of their community and the love that they have individually for the Lord as well. And so that was a blessing. So those were three kind of the main things and activities from day to day. Of course, each day, Brother Jeff and I tried to speak with the men that had invited us and encourage them and speak to them about their beliefs, their doctrine, their teaching, and I'll say more about that in a moment. But we traveled from place to place in a van, a very small van with all of us in there, but we're kept safe by our hosts there in Pakistan. Brother Shirag encouraged us for our security to stay at his home. He believed that a hotel would introduce a little more security concern than he was comfortable with. And so he invited us to stay in his home, and it's also a very small home, certainly by our standards. And his wife and his son actually went and stayed with some others while Jeff and I were there. And so we stayed with him and traveled from place to place in a van that was driven by a driver that Brother Shirag has known for years and years, but is a Muslim, Hafiz, and we spoke with Hafiz throughout the week as well a very kind man, and certainly took care of us while we were there, driving all over Lahore and in the surrounding areas. So again, much more could be said, but for this video, just a general sense of what we did from day to day. So what is next? Where do we go from here with this work, both in the near term, and what are our thoughts about the long-term activities of this opportunity to share the gospel and share Christ, encourage believers in the nation of Pakistan? Many, after I have shared what we experienced and have rightly acknowledged that there are a number of logistical challenges with helping people in Pakistan. It is difficult and in some ways impossible for us, just as individuals, even as organizations or churches, to send money to these people in Pakistan, to these communities, to Brother Shirag or to the church or to the school. There are no mechanisms that allow that to happen. There are some opportunities to send small amounts of money, and by small amounts I mean very small amounts of money over an extended period of time. Pakistan has often been a throughput, you might say, for radical Islamic terrorism. Many of you likely know that Pakistan is where Osama bin Laden was found, just a little bit north of its capital, Islamabad. And so terrorists have long been in the nation of Pakistan. And to their credit, the government in Pakistan is trying to keep an eye on finances that flow in and out of the nation that could end up in the hands of radical terrorists. And they don't want that for their own purposes any more than anyone else would. And so it's difficult. And so how can we provide help financially to these people? And of course, the financial help is only a part of our intention in this work. Above that is the sharing of the gospel. We'll say more about that in a minute, and teaching and encouraging and exhorting the believers there that we've come now to know, and to help sharpen their doctrinal precision, and again share more about that in a moment. But back to just how can we even move forward? How can we even supply them any kind of help in a financial way? How could we support the school financially, or these communities of Christians that are in such poverty? How is it that we can go about that? And because of those challenges, many times it's extremely difficult. Well, I want to share with you a story that we are now famously calling the banker story. And I believe the evidence of the Lord's hand in our trip there. Brother Shirag had for some time, long before our arrival in Pakistan, separately had been working on behalf of the school to allow the school to be approved to have its own bank account. I know that sounds very simple to us, but in Pakistan, any Christian organization, and certainly the school as a Christian school, had some challenges to be approved for a bank account. And you can imagine the difficulty that not having a bank account as an organization the difficulties that would present, the sophistication that it would not allow you to have, and the challenges just from a logistical standpoint to pay for things and to buy things that you need. Well, Shirag had been for some time trying to establish a bank account, and he had been given the name of a man named Afzal Aftab. And he was scheduled to meet with this man, Afzal. Afzal is a vice president at a bank in Pakistan, and in the city of Lahore is where his office is, working for the bank that he works for. And Afzal is the only Christian banker in all of Pakistan that has reached the level of a vice president. He is Catholic, and yet under the heading again of Christianity, the only Christian of any kind that has been given the opportunity and is in a position at that level within a bank of vice president where he can have influence And so Shirag was given Afzal's name. It said, you should speak with Afzal. He's a man maybe that can help you. Again, all of this separate from Jeff and I's trip there. But we had been to the school Monday morning, and we had shared with the children. We'd shared the gospel with them and spent some time with them and spoken with the administrator. We'd spent the morning at the school. And then Shirag said, I have a meeting with this banker that I need to go to. And of course, everywhere Shirag went, we went. He never let us out of his sight. And so we went with him and his team in the van, and Shirag went into the bank and had his meeting with Afzal on that Monday afternoon. And Jeff and I were out in the van while that meeting was going on. And the teaching conference that had been scheduled was the following day on Tuesday. And Shirag had shared with Afzal and said, we have two men from the United States here preaching and sharing Christ and sharing the gospel with us for some time. And tomorrow they're teaching at a teaching conference. And Shirag invited Afzal to come. And Afzal couldn't come, but he did want to meet us. And so we went in and met with Afzal in his office there in the bank. And Afzal just began to share with us a little bit about himself and said that he was the only Christian in all of Pakistan at a vice president level. Wasn't bragging. He was just saying that the Lord had allowed him to be in this position, is what he believed. And he desired to help Christians in his community to get financial assistance that they need. And so that's why he'd been given, Shirag had been given Afzal's name, because Afzal is interested in being a help to the Christian community there in Pakistan. Well, as Afzal was sharing with us, and he said, he told us I was able to study in the United States and get my degree in accounting. And he said that he graduated, and he said this very quickly. He said, I graduated from Missouri State University. And then he went on and he began to continue to tell us about some other things. And I stopped him and I said, can you tell me again where you graduated? And he said, Missouri State University. And I said, go Bears. And I graduated from Missouri State University. And I asked Brother Afzal, call him brother, and have spoken with him a number of times, and certainly want to continue to look into that. But I asked him, when did you graduate? And he said 1994. And I said, I graduated in 1995. And so we had that in common, and was kind of an interesting cross connection. Here I was, a man, Shirag, felt compelled by the Lord to invite me, after hearing a message on sermon audio, to come to Lahore, Pakistan, meeting with the school, and the only vice president in all of Pakistan who is a Christian of any kind. We went to the same university. Pretty incredible. I've tried to imagine what the odds are, and I don't know that I know the math to do that, but they no doubt are way beyond coincidence. And so we had a wonderful time sharing together. I have spoken many times since coming home to Afzal, and I believe that he is going to provide the key component of what's necessary for us to put the infrastructure financially together to help them. We have already made great progress. The bank account for the school has been opened. They are also setting up an organization that is then submitting to the government for what is called an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, I think is what MOU stands for. An MOU is required for any organization in Pakistan to receive money from any foreign institution or person or organization. It needs to be approved. It needs to be given this MOU from the government. 14 different agencies are responsible for granting this MOU, so it is going to be a process. But as it turns out, Afzal has helped 8 other organizations get their MOU, Christian organizations. And so he has agreed and is excited and very interested in helping us with the financial components, getting them in place to make sure it's all proper and correct and approved by the government. And so all of that, I believe, is going to be in place sooner than I ever anticipated. I spoke literally just this morning, and it's March 18th. I spoke this morning with Afzal, and he believes that within a month or two, it's possible that that MOU can be in place. It will probably be longer, he said, but it could be as early as that. So they're working on that end to have the organization that they've established on behalf of the schools and others there to receive money from any who might be interested in submitting. And again, the finances are an area that I am very much concerned is handled appropriately. I'll say this now, I might say it again a little bit later. I think the worst thing that we could possibly do is send a waterfall of money over to those people. I know we would love to. I know that would feel like the right thing to do. But what I shared with Shirag is I would rather be able to sustain them with many, many years of assistance, rightly accounted for, as properly accounted for as we possibly can, and I'd rather assist them long term than short term. And so, if you're interested in helping us financially, I'll have more to say about that at the end of the video today. We are in a position where we can accept those donations, but I wanted to share with you some of the doors that the Lord has opened to allow us even to do that, because without this kind of a connection, it would be very, very difficult for us to do that. Not impossible, but much more difficult than what it's proving to be with what I believe the Lord putting certain people in certain places at certain times to allow us to do that. So where we go from here, the financial piece, I believe God has put the pieces of the puzzle there in place. I've promised nothing, of course. I told Shirag that I would share with our churches and brothers and sisters here about their needs, and we'll let the Lord move and guide anyone who would like to contribute, and we'll just let the Lord do that. So I think two areas of assistance is the schools financially to support them, to underwrite tuition for the students. The students, by the way, don't pay tuition. Their families couldn't possibly afford it. So all of the churches, all of the Christian churches in that area actually help and support as they can the school there. The administrator takes no pay. He works from 7 in the morning till around 1:30 to 2 in the afternoon at the school when they let out, and then he has a job that he goes to from 3 o'clock for a 9-hour shift of his own, and he does that every day, and he does it because he desires the work of the Lord to prosper there. So there are needs, and the Christian community there is participating together to help one another. But certainly I think we could step in and fill some significant gaps for them. The Lord has blessed us in such a way financially with prosperity that I think there's opportunity, but there's many works, many areas that the Lord has in place to be working, and so certainly we'll let the Lord guide and direct. So financially, I think the schools, and then of course just the alleviation of poverty in those places where we can, feeding those children a good meal of rice and chicken as often as we can, something they don't get every day. We were able to provide it for them while we were there in country, and was certainly a blessing. So financially, I think we have a couple of different areas where we are looking to help them. And then lastly, the teaching. And I say lastly not in importance, but because it's where I want to spend some time with you in this video to share with you about. We must not forget that Islam is the official religion of Pakistan. Islamic terrorists have long used Pakistan as a safe haven, particularly during the time that the United States was in Afghanistan. Terrorists would just cross the border from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and they would have safety there because the U.S. wasn't in Pakistan. And then they would go back to Afghanistan and cause their trouble. And of course, now the U.S. has pulled out of Afghanistan, and so many of those terrorists now are in Afghanistan directly. But Pakistan's long been a location of Islamic terrorism, not only Islamic terrorism is a threat, but just any threat of the fact that Pakistan is, its official religion is Islam, and with that blasphemy law that we spoke of earlier. So it's a dangerous place. Less than a week after Brother Jeff and I returned from our trip there was a bombing at a mosque, actually. There have been many bombings over the years in Lahore as well, directly there in Christian churches, and many people have died. And so this is a work that's going to be very different from many of the works that we have been a part of as our people. Not better, not worse, but different, very different. There's a degree of danger to any trip. Danger not just for those who travel, but for the Christians who live there, bringing attention where it might not be welcome. I've been in places before where my personal safety was somewhat at risk. I don't want to overstate things. But when I was traveling to Liberia with Brother Bryson, we were both threatened before we came, and they sent, I think, an email the night before we left: if you come, we're going to kill you. And Sarah, my wife, asked me while I was in Pakistan whether it was different. Is it different from being in Liberia as far as the danger or the concern? And I said, it is different. And the difference is that in Liberia you had something of a hope that, eventually the legal system would catch up with you and you would have someone to help. In Pakistan, the legal system is not going to help you. It will put you in prison or take your life. So this is a very different work. There would be no law in the land that would come to my aid or Brother Jeff's aid. And I knew my own government would do little, even if they had an interest in trying. Aside from the personal threat, though, a primary concern of mine in going in the first place has to be, as the Lord commanded us to be, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. I did not want to introduce any unnecessary risk to the people there by an American coming and preaching the gospel, and the attention that might raise with the wrong people. I intend to return. I think Brother Jeff, I certainly won't speak for him publicly, but I think both of us share something of a sense that we believe that there will be return trips. But I do not believe it would be wise for us to organize large groups or many people to go. Aside from the danger of such a trip, the logistics of hosting a large group or even a number of any size would be challenging for Shirag. Again, those logistical challenges that Shirag underwent just to see to our safety, he said, probably every day, your safety, your security is most important to us, and we want to make sure we deliver you back to your families and safely, and see you safely through Pakistan as you share the gospel. I have often said that there is a difference between trusting the Lord and testing Him. We're supposed to trust Him. We don't have any other option but to trust Him. But we are not to test Him. I didn't want to be guilty of metaphorically climbing to the top of the temple and throwing myself off and expecting God to save me. I was at peace with whatever happened to me because I was at peace with the fact that it was the Lord who was doing the sending. What God did with me while there was completely up to Him. I was fine with whatever that would turn out to be. After all, when Christ saved me, I was called to leave this world, in a sense, to turn from this world. So in a way, if I'm following Him, if we're following Him correctly and we're obeying that command, then in a sense we've already left this world, haven't we? And besides that, there is nothing that anyone can do. There is no way for anyone to kill what God has made alive, and He He saved me and he made me alive forevermore on that day. So I was not concerned for me. And yet need to acknowledge that it's not a trip that you take without a clear understanding that it is of the Lord. This type of persecuted environment in Pakistan, this sense of danger and risk to you, financially as well as literally physically in your life, that type of environment has shaped the way Christianity is lived out in Pakistan. And I think as you would think about it, it would make sense. I would say it this way. I don't believe they have the doctrinal precision that we enjoy here in the United States. I think many of those people know the Lord. I think that was apparent to me and Brother Jeff. I think to profess Christianity in the nation of Pakistan brings with it a certain degree of soberness and truthfulness just by making the statement. I recognize that's still not enough, that it is only a new birth, heartfelt salvation that we experience. But because of the environment that they are in and the threat under which they live, there isn't the strict or stringent denominational awareness there that there is here. I don't say this to share concerns largely, other than I think there is an opportunity for us to help them and to do as they did with in the scriptures of Apollos. Remember, he was a powerful preacher, and then others were privileged to come along and show him the way more excellently. We read of the centurion Cornelius in Acts chapter 10 and 11, and how that the Lord moved upon him to have Peter come, and how the Lord was in the midst of all of that. And Cornelius called in chapter 10 a godly man and one who feared God, and yet clearly, if you read the scripture close enough, his doctrinal precision was not where it needed or could be otherwise. And so I think teaching is another opportunity for us, and we've set up the ability, a website for us to share teaching. I've been sending those weekly, and so that's another area I think that this work will focus in. I will say this as well. I know it will be a concern for many, and as it should be. Brother Jeff and I spoke and questioned and asked about, in many different ways, many different occasions, about how they present the gospel and salvation, and whether they preach a heartfelt experience with God. Do they give a verse of scripture to repeat? Do they give a prayer to repeat? Pronounce "you saved"? All of those things that would come under the heading of easy believism here in the United States, that we would call it easy believism. When we would ask those questions, the questions just didn't register with Shirag and the others. And I think after some time, and by the way, I will say that they absolutely agreed and concurred. Yes, this is something that happens inside of us. We're born again. They concurred with that, and they agreed with that. But anytime we tried to ask whether certain activities were done in a church or in any other setting, this whole idea of easy believism just didn't register with them. And it dawned on me one day, well, how could it? The whole idea of easy believism in Pakistan is something of a paradox. There's no such thing as easy Christianity in Pakistan. There's easy Christianity here, and we know the damage that it has done. It's easy for me to say in this nation I'm a follower of Christ because I'll pay very little for saying so. I know things are changing today in our nation. I don't know where they're going. And I know you might experience some sideways glances, and you will not be a popular person, but you're not going to receive very much persecution, if any, really of any significance at all. And so the idea of easy believism there is just not something that registers with them, not something that makes a lot of sense. And so we left there and believing that there's certainly some teaching that we can do with them, encouragement around some doctrine, sharpening that doctrine, helping them as they help us, by the way, and show us what it is to live as Christians in a place where their very lives are threatened and their very livelihoods are threatened on a daily basis. And so certainly this teaching is going to go both ways, but I think our part can be to help them with teaching. And so I'll be sharing more about that in the months to come and as this work continues to move forward. So those are the three areas that I think that we will be involved in. One, teaching. Teach them weekly, consistently, share with them about the gospel, and then the other things and the doctrines that the Lord has left us. And the second area of help is the schools. I believe that we can be of help there, financially, of course, but also I think in other ways, as we will come alongside them or partner with them as we can. And then the third area of work will just be Christian charity, helping them, alleviating a few growling stomachs where we can. As James told us, what good does it do if we say a brother comes to us without clothes and without food, and we say, go away, be warmed and filled, and yet we don't give them what they need? What good is that? And so I think there is certainly much help that we can provide there, and ask the Lord to open those doors and give us wisdom in how we do it. Very quickly, a word on accountability with the finances. I had many conversations with Shirag while I was there about our insistence that it would be handled with the utmost of precision and accountability. And he was very interested in pursuing that. He was not resistant to that idea at all. He was very welcome to it. He brought us, while we were there, the receipts for the money we had given them to buy the rice and to pay the driver and to do all the things that are necessary in a trip like this. And he prompted those meetings as often as I did. And so he understands that. I think as well the banker, Afzal, has agreed to be something of an intermediary for us, to sign off and validate that money that is sent goes where it's intended to go. So I feel very glad for that the Lord has provided this opportunity for us to be above board with the finances. And there's nothing like money for the enemy to get in the middle and just light a fire to the Lord's work. And so we want to be very careful and very diligent, always willing to be as transparent as we possibly can be with the money. So how then can you get involved? Currently, Covenant Church, the church of which I'm a member and pastor, has agreed to be the intermediary for this work and has opened a dedicated bank account that will be the Pakistan Mission Fund for the time being. Through this connection with Brother Afzal, we're going to be able to work through the difficulties of sending money from us to them once that's in place in the coming weeks. And again, Covenant has that bank account to be used for the work in Pakistan. Financial assistance then, if you or your church would like to send it, can be sent to Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. I'll provide the address on the screen here in the video. And so if you'd like to support the work, just send it to that address. And just make sure, of course, that in the memo line or in a letter, some way you confirm for us that it is intended for the Pakistan mission work. We'll provide donation receipts, of course, as it will be a charitable contribution, and we'll provide reporting as well financially ongoing so that people can keep an eye on things and we can hold ourselves accountable to those gifts. We have some ideas long term. I won't take the time in the video today to share, but a lot of things on the horizon if the Lord continues to open doors for us to be a blessing to people over there for the long term. And I have some ideas that I'll be sharing in perhaps future videos as well about some of the things that I'm thinking of in that regard. But if, again, you'd like to send a one-time gift to us, you'd like to send an ongoing gift, we're in a position now where we can receive those, and we'll continue to keep you updated of those things. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I hope that it's been informative. It's just a very small piece of all the things that I could share and would love to share if time would allow. I want you to pray more than anything else for wisdom and discernment that the Lord's work would be done here. Every time I think about this, continue to be amazed at God's work in the world, how He has people all over this world who are following His Son and who love Him. And I pray that the Lord would help us to be a partner with these people and encourage them in their efforts to share the gospel. And I thank you again for taking the time to listen to this video. I pray the Lord would go with each and every one of you. Thank you.